Good morning, good afternoon. Dr. Lett here. On this episode of I'm Dr. Lett, the podcast, I am honored to be joined by Alex Hertzer, Executive Director of the Mahoning Valley Manufacturers Coalition. Now, listen, I've interviewed someone else that's doing amazing work in the Mahoning Valley, and that is the intention, is to let you know that the Mahoning Valley, we haven't gone anywhere, right? We're just reinventing ourselves. Which, if you know anything about Youngstown, the Youngstown region, Warren, we're resilient. So let's just get into it because he's going to dig into a lot of great things. So without further ado, Alex, please introduce yourself.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. And honestly, your passion is super encouraging. I feel the same way about this valley. Is that, it's not the end. It's just a new evolution for us. But Alex Hertzer, I'm the current executive director of Mahoning Valley Manufacturers Coalition. Grew up in the Mahoning Valley. I was a Warren kid. Haven't gone very far since then, but I love it.
Now tell us. I'm really interested to learn more about you transitioned from a plant superintendent to executive director of MVMC. Tell us about your career journey.
Yeah, so it's a unique story, I think, and it actually starts before manufacturing, right? So not to take you too far back, but really it does start like when I graduated high school. So I have an 18-year-old daughter now she just graduated high school. I was about 19 when I had her. And so for one reason or another, I didn't have time to go to school, to be honest. I just went to work, found myself in restaurants. It was, at the time it was like 2008. It was easy to find a job in a restaurant. But I learned a lot through that, and I was able to build a career. I worked for some pretty big kind of corporate restaurants, worked my way up in management. And then at some point, my daughter's getting older and work-life balance, we hear that a lot. And it was like, man, the schedule's crazy. It wasn't the right thing anymore. Yeah. So I actually had a buddy who was working at a plant here in Trumbull County, and he said, it's a pretty good job. It's steady pay. It's the same hours every day, at least, weekends off, whatever. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to do it. I'm going to take a little bit of a risk. Yeah. I'm going to leave my salary position. It's not that much of a difference in pay, to be honest. And I just kind of fell in love with it. So I came in as a mill operator. I really had no mechanical experience or anything. I always tell people I wasn't a car guy or anything, but it was the first time I realized that I'm a hands-on learner, because once I actually got in there and was operating the machine and troubleshooting and doing all that kind of stuff, I really fell in love with it. And so I was able to take that, and I worked really hard, and fortunately a supervisor position opened up, and I applied, and they graciously promoted me to a supervisor. They kind of took my past management experience and allowed me to transfer those skills into this new setting, which to be honest isn't too much different, right? It's still kind of production. You're producing a different product. And so I did that for a couple of years. I worked on the off shift. In manufacturing, the off shift, a lot of time, that's your new employees, right? So there's a lot of people like me who didn't really know anything about manufacturing, wasn't used to the environment, the loud noises, the big building, the trucks running around. And I just kind of fell in love with training, teaching, coaching, developing, I'd always enjoyed those in leadership roles, but this was really cool because it was new and different. And it was a little bit more complex than restaurants, and I did that. And then fortuitously, the plant superintendent role opened up. I was able to move into that role and essentially kind of right-hand man to the plant manager. Relatively decent size operation. I mean, it's about 365,000 square feet, producing about 1 million pounds of steel every day. So it was a lot. It was quick learning. You learn by putting your feet to the fire. And then the company I previously worked for was a member of the Mahoning Valley Manufacturers Coalition. So that's how I got introduced to the organization. And really, it just started with me kind of volunteering my time at a lot of it was youth events, student events and things like that, and talking to kids about manufacturing and doing little projects with them. And I got to talk to the previous executive director, Jessica Borza, and there was an opportunity. She needed some help. I took another little leap of faith and dip my toe into the nonprofit world, which people say this all the time. It's like drinking from a fire hose when you first get in, right? All the acronyms, all of
Yep.
it. And so I came in as assistant director, worked under Jessica, learned a lot from Jessica. And then she had a fortunate kind of, I guess, promotion, you'd say. She got hired as the managing director of workforce for the Ohio Manufacturers Association, which is a statewide organization, also focused on manufacturing, and a big part is workforce. And I spent about 6 months as interim executive director. And then I think August of 24, the board finally approved me to move into the executive director role. So it's been kind of a winding road, but it's fun.
Now, I will say, Alex, it's interesting you mentioned working in nonprofit is like drinking from a fire hose. For anyone that knows Alex, the man is everywhere. Like, it's probably easier to name where he's not at. All things Mahoning Valley, not just in manufacturing. And I'm like, Alex, what are you doing here? But and also, Alex, I also thought working in fast food, it would be really interesting for you to go around asking, "Welcome to Good Burger, home of the Good Burger."
Yeah.
Actually, you know what? I don't know how many of you are actually old enough. Let me know if you're old enough to understand that reference. Right. But now,
I also have a hard time saying no. So I think that's part of my problem too.
now, Alex, now you mentioned, you have an 18-year-old, which, knowing you for as long as I've known you, it's crazy to actually hear that out loud, to be honest. But when you think about the talent coming out of high schools and career tech centers today, you noted that technical skills are only half the battle. So how is MVMC designing programs to build both professional character and technical competence simultaneously?
Yeah, it is interesting. And it's not just a generational thing, I think. I think it's kind of across the board, and everybody has their own opinions on why and how, but at the end of the day, I'll give you a really clear example of something that we just did that we're piloting, and I'm pretty excited about. But so we're working with Warren City Schools, and we're piloting a new pre-apprenticeship program. And I would say the meat, I guess, of the program is a summer internship. So students are spending 25 hours a week at 2 different manufacturing locations, and then they come back their senior year to do the technical skills training. And the goal is that they have a full-time job when they graduate, right? But before any of that happens, we made sure 2 things. One, we partnered with an organization to provide mentorship to the students, right? So I think, and I tell people this all the time, like, it's not a bad thing to have a mentor or a coach. Like, everybody has support systems in their life. Having an extra one only helps you out. You know what I mean? So that's the one thing. And that does kind of a lot of times emphasize, because when you think about social skills and things like that, my personal opinion is they're not taught in a classroom, right? Like, they're taught through doing it the wrong way, saying the wrong thing, listening, modeling, right? Hearing somebody say it the right way. So having that extra person also kind of supports that soft skills development, life skills development, things like that. And then the students did go through a structured soft skills development, also included financial literacy, a number of different skills that maybe aren't technically manufacturing related, but at the end of the day is going to help them to maintain like a really sustainable career, pathway.
Yeah, and great lead in to kind of this next question. But before that, you mentioned mentorship. And for anyone watching this, I always highlight the importance of mentorship and networking and fostering those two. And I can tell you, Alex and I did not rehearse this interview. It's just that mentorship is so important. In many ways, I argue that you should have more than one mentor, because one mentor, while they can be amazing and they can be great, you need someone that can help you professionally, personally. It could be academically, tech skills, right? And that's a lot to put on one person. Now, Alex, since the steel mills collapsed in the Mahoning Valley, it for a very long time, it was always suggested just hire more people, right? Now the strategic focus, it's really shifted towards retention and upskilling. And you touched on this in your previous response, but what are some of the shifts in workplace culture that Mahoning Valley employers should make to keep the talent that they have?
Yeah. So I think the shift is honestly a numbers game, right? There are less people to hire, right? We live in a declining, aging population. So, and even 5 years ago, I've been with the organization about 4.5 years. I mean, you would still get resumes, folks that had maybe 10 years of experience. And especially you think about it, not just those entry level jobs, but those like really core industrial trades like machining, welding, maintenance technician, relatively speaking. And those people either they work for somebody already and that company's paying them and doing everything they can to retain them. So, or they just don't exist, to be quite honest. So companies really do have to think differently about so I would say, yes, retention and upskilling for sure, but I would also add like pipeline development to that. So I mentioned like my first interaction with MVMC was going and interacting with students, right? So we at MVMC hold really strongly to the philosophy that like our students are probably one of the greatest assets we have in our community. And the truth of the matter is, depending on the age and experience, a lot of them just don't even know. Like they might drive past a manufacturer, they don't know what happens inside there. They've never seen a CNC machinist. They've never, you see teachers, doctors, lawyers, but you don't see all that kind of stuff, right? So I would say, one, employers need to be thinking more strategically on like a 20-year pipeline development, right? So like literally starting with like elementary and middle school kids, and then retention. Manufacturing kind of gets I don't know, I would say a bad rap sometimes, right? Like, and some of it's true, right? I mean, there's longer shifts and things like that. But I think that's another evolution that local companies need to start making, is understanding that playbook is not going to work forever, right? And you see some really great examples of that. We work with Hometown Products. Mark Mancha is our board president, and he still runs, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, but he runs 4 6-hour shifts, right? So it's a lot more amenable to somebody who may be a parent or, so there's examples these are able to do that. And then, the last piece is, I was on a call with a potential new member yesterday, and they're really heavy into welding. Like they need welders. They do structural steel. So you got to have high level certifications, things like that. And I told him the exact same thing. I was like, I personally don't have a magic wand for welders and machinists. Like the answer is homegrown. Like that is the answer.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, so, and that's part of, developing a pipeline too. But investing in your people. And, the age old thing is like, well, if I train them, then they're going to take those skills and go somewhere else. Well, if you don't train them and you keep them, they're not, what I mean? What value are they providing,
Yeah. Now, what I also think about when it comes to manufacturing is I think about, there's this technological just evolution just everywhere. Companies investing in, robots and AI software, all that. I'm not going to get too far because, listen, my doctorate is in education, y'all. But so when you think about technology rapidly reshaping manufacturing, and a coalition such as yours and many others, how, I guess, what role does coalitions play in ensuring that the workforce, whether it's the long-term workers or folks going through the pipeline, have the technical skills with this technology? It's interesting to think that even a year ago, some of the technology we're thinking about ChatGPT and all the others, right? So who knows 6 months from now? So what role does a coalition play in, ensuring the workforce is prepared?
Yeah, I had a similar thought the other day, and I was like, man, just in 5 years, how much has changed? Like, I can't imagine what it even look like. But I would say, one, specifically for our coalition, the biggest thing is that we are manufacturer led, right? And the whole intention of our organization was that manufacturers are in the driver's seat in the conversations around education, around vocational, training, around higher education, so that we can implement in real time as technology advances, right? So we're constantly getting that input from manufacturers, whether it's through surveys or, we do, I don't call them focus groups, we call them shop talk, but essentially, a time for manufacturers to come together and kind of share ideas and brainstorm and stuff like that. So making sure that our kind of training and education stakeholders have the most real-time information, while also, I would say, partnering strategically with other organizations that is more, the actual technological advancement is more in their wheelhouse. So we work really closely with like the Youngstown Business Incubator, America Makes, Magnet up in Cleveland, if you're familiar. So a lot of times when we're in these conversations, I'm not educated on, robotics, and, I can't help them actually implement anything on that side. But there are resources in our community that have that really advanced manufacturing level of expertise too, that we like to support.
Yes. And Alex actually mentioned pipeline building and really, whether shop talk or focus groups. And it's almost as if he read my dissertation. Now, hey, for anyone out there, if you want to read a dissertation, hey, let me know. Now, Alex, I've been incredibly inspired by how hard you work to uplift the Mahoning Valley. And I'm telling everyone out there, Alex not only believes in what he's, promoting, whether it's programming, whether it's going for funding to uplift a community, but he's the one on the ground, right? He's showing up. He's the day in, day out work. So when you think about Alex, you pouring your heart into the Mahoning Valley, I'd like to ask, who inspired you to give back to the community?
Yeah, I feel very fortunate to say that there's been more than one person that's done that for me. I would start by saying my dad. I mean, when it comes to my work ethic and just like rubber meets the road, we got to get stuff done. Like, that guy had me out there cutting. He owned rental properties, and so there's a lot of property management and cutting grass and painting fences. And at ages you're probably not supposed to be doing that at. And even to this day, his retirement plan is to go start a cattle farm. Like, that doesn't sound like retirement, but you do whatever you need to do. I would also say I spent a good deal of time with the rescue mission of the Mahoning Valley. John Muckridge, was pretty inspirational to me. Just the way he really like poured himself into that place. You can see that just in the their new facility and everything that they've done to kind of make things better, I would say. My plant manager, who's also the vice president of my board, a guy I worked with at my previous company, he was also, I got some great stories, with him where you learn, that's what I said, you learn lessons in real time, you know what I mean? And sometimes it means we're there for 17 hours and we're, got our hands deep in a machine and trying to figure it out. And, you model those things. And then the last person I have to mention is Jessica Borza. So Jessica, former executive director, in my mind, really kind of gave me a shot that maybe not a lot of people would have. And yeah, I learned a ton, about workforce, about the ecosystem, all that kind of stuff.
Alex, now you gave a shout out to some incredible people. What does it mean now for you to be that person to someone, a hero, a mentor, someone, the Valley looks up to? What does that mean?
It's honestly still a little confusing, just because I think, you don't see yourself like that. You know what I mean? And it was probably maybe last year sometime. So I feel old, a young man reached out to me and asked me to intentionally mentor him. And you want me? And, but it brings a level of respect and just living above reproach. I don't know how else to say that, but like, living and doing the right thing because it's the right thing to do. And nobody's looking,
Oh, and I absolutely love that. And admittedly, I'm still so incredibly honored when people will approach me and they want advice or mentorship or anything like that. So I can completely agree with you. It's really interesting. One day you're looking up to so many different people, and then you turn around and now people are coming to you for advice. So I can
Yeah.
understand. It's surreal. It's really an honor. Wow.
It's surreal. I mean, honestly, I mean, I'll be transparent. When I first started with the MVMC, I had major imposter syndrome. Like I was like, I don't feel like I'm in the right place. I don't know, why these people are asking me all these questions. But yeah, eventually you build yourself up too.
Yes, yes, absolutely love it. And you know what's also interesting now, Alex and I are rather we're close in age, and it's interesting to think of some of the people we may interact and engage with, and they're young people to us, but they're not young, and that's really an interesting shift there, Alex. I would imagine for you as well.
Yeah. Yeah. It was like a relatively recent college graduate who is not a child, you know what I mean? But like does feel significantly younger.
You know, probably it really hit me when, you know, working with college students, and I'll explain maybe a childhood experience, and they're like, oh, my mom told me they did that. Listen, y'all, I felt some type of way. I was in my feelings a little bit. Now, Alex, as we conclude this incredible interview, tell us, how can anyone connect with you?
Yeah. So I would encourage everyone, if they're just interested in the MVMC, go to the website. It's Mahoning Valley MFG.com. Maybe not the best tagline, but it's a little long. A lot of great information there. You can submit, an interest form depending on what you're looking for. And then I tell people all the time, I give them my business card and I say, that's my cell phone number on there. That's my email address. If you need anything, just get a hold of me. So I can share my email, but people are welcome to email me at alex@mahoningvalleymfg.com. Yeah. And, like we conversed on LinkedIn, so feel free to connect with me there too.
Yes, incredible. And before we end, tell us, what takeaways from this interview should viewers leave with?
Yeah, I would hope that viewers leave with an understanding, kind of where you started, right? The resiliency of the Mahoning Valley, and what I do think is interesting. We talked a lot about technological advances, and that is 100% happening, but we still need those core occupations. I hear it from our members all the time. I need machinists and welders, and you know what I mean. And those are the things that we do. So, legacy manufacturing exists in the Mahoning Valley, as well as future technology type of manufacturing too.
Yes, thank you so much, Alex. It has been an honor. And as I mentioned at the beginning of this interview, the Mahoning Valley didn't go anywhere. We're just reinventing ourselves. So Alex is someone on the front lines of doing that incredible work. And I'm telling you, there are jobs. Connect with Alex. I will put his contact information in the description. Alex, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.